Bite-sized.
Welcome to Gaikoku Gamers. I'm Darryl Benson. So, I just want to go ahead and tell you guys that I recently went ahead and got an Xbox 360e model. Turns out that someone, for whatever reason, couldn't figure out how to turn off their parental settings on the system and decided that it was worth nothing and sold it for a buy it now price that was so cheap it was pathetic. It wasn't even triple digits. Pretty cheap. So anywho, I ended up getting a new controller because I didn't like the one that he had shipped to me. And after I got my system set up and I did little teeny, left, right, I think it was like A, Y, left, right, whatever combination to undo the parental stuff, I decided that I wanted to focus on this controller a little bit. So I'm going to be using my 360 not so much for 360 games, but more for original Xbox titles and arcade titles. I really missed, being able to play a lot of the Sega-produced arcade games like Daytona USA, Virtua Fighter 1 and 2, that type of stuff, and well, not 1, but 2. Fighting Vipers, and a number of other stuff. Sonic the Fighters. There's a bunch of games that they released that I wanted to play. I had already purchased, and so yeah, I have that, and that's great. And I'll be utilizing this system, like I said, to play original Xbox titles. And my favorite original Xbox controller was the Duke, i.e. the first one, i.e. the one that was huge. I have the faceplate for it. This guy, this big old monstrosity, it's like holding a bear. Anyway, I think this is actually a really nice controller. It's extremely unique. It basically is a new iteration of one of my favorite controllers of all time, which is a Dreamcast controller. Except they made rubberized joysticks and put 2 of them on there. In fact, this whole area here where the Xbox symbol is essentially nothing but closing up and filling up the whole space that was there for the window for the VMU. Because right here were the 2 memory card slots, just like a Dreamcast controller. This controller was co-developed with Sega and Microsoft at the same time because they hired a bunch of people from Sega. They hired a bunch of hardware people. It was Sega who went ahead and helped them make Xbox Live, and it was Sega who helped them with the hardware and specifically the controller. So if you're a big Xbox fan, you can thank Sega. Who'd have thunk? Anyway, so I decided to do a very simple mod, if you even want to call it that. I found this controller, which as you can see is in pieces. And I got it in pieces because it was broken. The store had it. It was actually in really nice shape, which is a shame, which is actually why I kind of parted it out and keeping pieces. But mechanically, it wasn't working. Which actually worked out in my favor. Because what I did is, since I'm playing original Xbox games anyway most of the time, I wanted my 360 pad to feel a little bit more like a Duke controller. And there you go. I went ahead and put the original Duke joysticks here, and they fit just perfectly fine. If you want my recommendation, get yourself some Scotch tape. Doesn't have to be specifically from Scotch, but they do make good tape. Put it over the... Where am I? These 2 buttons, the start and the menu, the guide button, the face buttons. So put 1 strip here, 1 strip here, and 1 strip here. The reason why you want to do that is because when you undo the screws in the bottom, there's 6, 1, 2, 3, and then the same ones 4, 5, 6, and then behind the battery compartment right here in this little barcode area. I thought it was up here for whatever reason. I ripped that off and there's nothing there. Anyway, that was my bad. Once you take that off, you can lift up the front faceplate with a little finagling, because it's going to catch onto this piece here, and you just kind of have to kind of pry it very gently so you don't break any clips from that piece, and then it'll lift. Now if you put the tape on the face buttons and here, when you lift it up, the buttons will stay with it, and it'll make it a lot easier to put together. There underneath it is going to be a like a membrane pad that stretches from here all the way to here. It covers all of these 7 buttons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are no necessary like guides to keep it in line. You just kind of have to line it up. So when you're putting that together, the controller, don't put it together, you know, vertically. It'll fall right out. Keep it on a table. Just put that right in there. There's 2 pegs here and 2 guides that go along where the rumble packs are here and here. And just slide it back on and then redo your screws. But yeah, so it works just fine. It actually, the sticks feel a little higher just because, you know, the divot, it's not as deep. These little bowls here, these concave sections here are not as deep, so your thumbs feel higher. I've always particularly liked that when playing games like Star Wars Battlefront or Halo. So I think it's great. I was actually going to go ahead and do the D-pad as well, and I have the D-pad here somewhere. Here it is. I have the D-pad here of the original Xbox, which I know a lot of people hated, but again, if you use this D-pad back then, you grew to like it. So I was going to use this inside this, but mechanically it's completely different. As you can see on the bottom of this, you have the micro switches kind of built into the pad, and it just kind of rocked there. There's a gigantic hole where the D-pad, where am I here? Gigantic hole where the D-pad obviously was, whereas on the 360, the D-pad actually doesn't come off from the shell. The D-pad stays there when you lift up the shell, is because there's a front part and a bottom part. And then on the shell itself, there's an area that's between the two. Basically, it's structurally completely different. I even thought about taking like a Dremel and getting rid of that part in the shell and widening up so that part could fit. But then even if I did do that, it wouldn't rock this the right way, and I would have to change the membrane. It just wasn't worth it. This D-pad's actually pretty good, so I'm actually quite happy with it. And I think it keeps it enough 360 that it's still a 360 pad, and it's just enough Duke to be a Duke. Because really the only thing about the Duke that I liked were the joysticks, the size, and the fact that you use middle fingers on the triggers instead of your index fingers. Well, I can't change the trigger placement. I can't really affect the size, so joysticks it is. I think it looks really slick. And if you're interested in doing this, just find yourself an old non-operational or operational if you have to Xbox original controller and get ones with joysticks that haven't worn down. I mean, obviously feel-wise it's going to feel just fine, but like as far as texture-wise, you want to get one that feels new. And the good thing is about the Duke controllers is that most people don't like them. So that means that most of them are, even if they're a little beat up physically, the joysticks themselves have not been worn down too bad. So yeah, that's my little guide for you. I will say this. I don't know if I have it here. Yes, I do. You will need a Torx 8. That's a T8 security bit. Security bit means that in the middle of the screw there's a little teeny like a little nipple, like a little bump, and if you get a regular Torx, it's going to hit that bump and it's not going to go any further. It's not going to actually grab onto anything with the teeth. So what I did, just because I was too lazy to go ahead and order one of the specific Xbox ones on Amazon or whatever, I just ground that down so it was a little longer, because these guys here in the front, these screw holes here in the front are too long for a stock piece to go in, and as you can see, this fits all the way down in there, whereas if that metal was still there, it would hit the shell and it wouldn't grab onto the screw. It's not too hard. Just take a grinder, make sure you don't hit the head. I actually got rid of one of the teeth. I'm probably sure it won't focus there. I got rid of one of the teeth because the grinder actually hit right there accidentally, but it's not a big deal. And these little bits, I got this at Harbor Freight. I think it was like $3. Comes with a little screwdriver, whole bunch of different heads for all different types of stuff. And so yeah, there you have it. Can't say it's too pretty afterwards, but it works, and that's the most important part. So if you don't want to spend, you know, $10-15 on an Xbox specific Torque 8 bit, and you can actually utilize the other ones now, just go ahead and do that if you have a grinder, and just go grind it away, and you should be good to go. So yeah, that's my Duke Xbox tutorial. It's very simple, anyone can do it. Because one thing that I was really curious about, because if you go ahead and look up Xbox joysticks, replacement joysticks on eBay, you always get the S style ones or the 360 style ones, which look like this. No one makes replacements for the Duke, which is weird. I guess there's no market for it. I can understand that, but so I wasn't sure if the connector on the bottom was that little square peg as you see here. I didn't know if maybe the reason why people weren't making these is because they didn't fit, but they do. It's the same connector, and I kind of was banking on that. So if you're curious as to whether or not the connector is the same on the Duke as it is on the S-style controller with the 360 pad, it is. So all the joysticks between those three controllers are completely interchangeable. Now I'm not sure about the Xbox One. I haven't taken apart my controller yet on that, but I would assume that those are the same way, and you probably put 360 joysticks on your Xbox One, or preferably Xbox One ones on your 360, and you should be good to go. So anyway, I'm Darryl Benson. This has been another bite-sized edition of Gaikoku Gamers, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bite-sized.